Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are excited to give you another opportunity to learn about another Texas Home Learning product. I'm going to hand it over to Allison, and she is a TEA staff member. I'll let her introduce herself, but she is going to walk you through everything you need to know about Odell. Similarly to this morning, if you were on the call about pre-kindergarten, Odell was not able to join us today, so we are making sure that you get all the information you need, and we'll be able to answer questions as well. So just like we've done in the previous sessions, if you've been here, please put questions in the chat, and then you can also, when we get to the end of the presentation, you can come off mute and ask any questions that way as well. All right, Allison, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Kendrick, really fast, can you just confirm that the screen looks right?
Yes, your screen looks great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here to spend a little bit of time talking with you about the Odell Texas High School Literacy Program. Just a little bit about myself. My name, as Kendrick said, is Allison Howery. I joined TEA in December, and I'm a content lead on the Open Education Resources team, supporting the development of our new secondary literacy products, including the Odell Texas High School Literacy Program. Prior to coming to TEA, I spent about 20 years teaching high school English in various states and districts, helping open new schools. I worked as an administrator. I did some curriculum writing for a district, and most recently, I was coaching leaders and teachers specifically around curriculum and instruction. So I'm really happy to be here. And I'm really excited about the Odell Texas program and sharing it with you today. Before we dive into talking about Odell in particular, I just want to backtrack a little bit and briefly highlight why we're focusing on instructional materials. In the context of our current reality, we know that many challenges and many ways that we need to adjust and respond to meet the need of students. In the context of our current reality, we know that there are many challenges and that we need to adjust and respond to meet the needs of students, families, and teachers in many different ways. We know that there are considerations around technology, staffing, the use of classroom space that are new, unique, and feeling very, very challenging right now. And given everything that districts are adjusting this year and possibly next as well, we just want to take a moment to ground ourselves and why one of the supports that TEA is providing for districts is Texas Home Learning, and specifically the instructional materials we've procured for free district use. Some of this material, some of what we're about to talk about on this slide may be a bit of a repeat from what you discussed yesterday, but I think it's really important for us to revisit this because this is going to ground our discussion about what Odell includes when we move on to the next section. So the research on instructional materials shows that student achievement increases when students are provided with consistent opportunities to work on assignments aligned to grade level standards, strong instruction where students do most of the thinking in a lesson, deep engagement in what students are learning, and teachers who hold high expectations and believe that all students can meet grade level standards on grade level assignments. We know that finding and using high quality instructional materials is challenging in general, and it's even more challenging in our current environment when we have to consider remote and hybrid possibilities, potential school closures, and larger student learning gaps. So this is where Texas Home Learning instructional materials could possibly meet your needs. So during our time, we're going to talk primarily about three things. The first is the instructional approach and components of the Odell Texas High School Literacy Program. How is it grounded in research-based best practices, and what does it include? The second thing we'll talk about are supports for learning loss and other COVID challenges that are built into the Odell Texas HSLP. The last thing we'll talk about briefly is licensing costs and additional considerations. And then, as Kendrick mentioned, we should have some time at the end for questions. You are welcome to post them in the chat throughout the session. And then at the end, there will be some email addresses that are shared, including mine, in case you have some questions that come up after today's session or in case we run out of time to talk through all of our questions. So first thing we're talking about is the instructional approach and components for Odell. Included within the Texas Home Learning 3.0 offering of Odell Texas HSLP are these components. And this may be a slide that if you were participated in the conference yesterday, you've already seen. These are all THL materials have been reviewed for quality and include the following components. The first is unit plans and daily lesson plans that are aligned to the Texas standards. In the Odell's case, this includes guidance for remote learning. The second is teacher, student, and family supports. In the context of Odell, this looks like a family guide that helps caregivers know what is being taught and how best to support their students. The third thing is a digital format with printing capability. All of the instructional materials are available digitally, and many of them are also available for print. The fourth is accessibility supports for all learners. So Odell includes embedded supports for all learners, including but not limited to graphic organizers, vocabulary guidance, optional scaffolding and enrichment activities, and narrative guidance for teachers at the lesson level. The fifth is formative and summative unit assessments. Odell, Texas includes end of unit assessments along with daily formative opportunities to assess learning through core activities. And then the last is built-in progress monitoring. There are lesson level checks for understanding, and then unit level section diagnostics with built-in reteach days. In terms of the programmatic approach to literacy, the Odell Texas High School literacy program is really built on these three pillars. The first is the learning community of students to analyze and discuss complex ideas. The second is knowledge of classic and contemporary texts and substantive topics. And the third is inquiry and agency via active learning to develop individual and collective agency. And then building on these curriculum pillars, Odell Texas HSLP integrates these research-based best practices with the grade level TEKS to support all students. So the first is text complexity, which includes regular practice with grade level complex text and academic language. The second is knowledge coherence, building knowledge and vocabulary through text in all content areas. And then the last is text-based responses, reading, writing, and speaking grounded in evidence from the text. And then the program structure is designed to enforce the academic pillars. So the Odell Texas High School Literacy Program, it's a mouthful, supports and enforces the academic pillars by seeking to inspire creativity, build knowledge, and enhance the skills students already possess by using student-centered and student-led analysis of robust texts and topics. The TEKS align instructional units, empower students to pose questions, inquire deeply, reflect, and evolve as independent thinkers and engage participants in their learning communities. The materials are designed to firmly root literacy in texts and ideas with a foundational premise that students explore texts worth reading and ideas worth considering. And then each grade level includes one foundation unit, 3 to 4 development units, and 1 application unit to conclude the year. In each of these units, students build knowledge by investigating a topic or anchor text through organized text sets in each of the units. So here's a little more detailed view of what the units, how the units are structured. In each unit, students read a series of texts to explore a common central text or central topic. Students express their understanding of the core body of knowledge and their development of TEKS that are built into the unit in a culminating task, which is the final assessment of each unit. The curriculum structure, both in terms of the units and the individual lessons, further exemplifies the knowledge building coherence. And the text sets guide and focus student learning and knowledge development by examining a diverse body of authors, perspectives, and genres. While students develop strands of knowledge within the units, they also extend their understanding across all of the units in their year and then across all 4 years of high school. Each unit also has a carefully curated text set that is designed to help build students' knowledge on both the skills and the complex texts and topics covered within the units. And here you can see an example of part of the text set for the Things Fall Apart unit. Okay, so that was the first section of the presentation, highlighting the programmatic structure for Odell, Texas. Next, we're going to dive into supports for learning loss and other COVID challenges. Before though, I just wanted to pause. Kendrick, are there any burning questions in the chat?
Not right now. We do not have anything in the chat right now.
Okay, sounds great. All right, so moving on to our second part, supports for learning loss and other COVID challenges. Okay, so how Odell, Texas HSLP can support with current needs from COVID challenges, there's really 3 ways. One is by addressing learning gaps from a year or more of uninterrupted learning. The second is by supporting teacher capacity through the provision of robust materials and guidance. And the third is by helping to reduce uncertainty with very robust guidance for both remote and in-person learning. So in terms of this first component, in terms of addressing learning gaps, unit types help address the learning needs of all students through systematic year-long study and practice. Each course, I think I mentioned this a couple slides ago, begins and ends with a foundation unit and application unit respectively. In between those units, each course includes 3 to 5 development units, which are designed to deepen students' knowledge and skills. Because there are more development units than you will have time for in your scope and sequence, these units also provide an opportunity for districts and teachers to have some optionality on the unit and text that they want to cover, enabling districts to make decisions to focus on what their students need most. In addition, all 3 unit types, the foundational units, the development units, and the application units, follow a similar instructional cadence with an opportunity to monitor student learning loss and gaps along the way and be responsive to student needs. So as you can see on this slide, each unit is divided into multiple sections. Each section includes lessons, and then a section diagnostic, and then a data respond to the data, and then an optional independent reading day. And then it concludes with a culminating task, which is the end of unit assessment. In addition, to help address learning loss and learning gaps, the section diagnostics include guidance on how best to adjust lessons and activities to meet students' identified needs. So as you can see here on the screen, we have an example from English 1 and an example from English 4. These are identified opportunity or guidance around opportunities for continued practice and support based on whatever data teachers are able to gather from the section diagnostic. I'll pause to give you a second to skim through that. We had the opportunity to share some of the guidance around responding to student data in one of our focus groups. And you can see from these quotes on the side that teachers and administrators found those to be incredibly helpful resources provided in the program, with one teacher saying that they love this and an administrator saying that this is gold right here. So we're excited about the guidance that is provided specifically to help close learning gaps. And then in addition, the program is really designed to support capacity constrained teachers by providing educative materials to help teachers and coaches build their own knowledge base, to provide choice in terms of implementation and learning activities within the material so that teachers are able to support diverse learning needs, and then to provide really robust remote learning guidance, which we'll have a chance to take a look at in just a minute. In terms of educative materials to support teachers and coaches in their own knowledge building, what you can see here are 2 different examples of materials that are provided. One is the unit overview, and one is another example of guidance around a section diagnostic. Each unit includes a unit overview that highlights key information about the units, the texts, the types of writing, the progression of knowledge and skills, and any additional information that they're going to need in order to be well informed about the unit before teaching. And then scoring notes are provided to help teachers see and understand the rigor bar and the types of quality responses that students should be submitting. You can see in here in this example, from the warmth of other suns, unit plan, the section 1 diagnostic scoring notes, plausible responses, and then the supporting evidence that students could use is identified to help teachers with scoring. In addition, text overviews are provided for each unit. They include a short analysis of the text, including a description of the features that make the text structure, language, and knowledge demands of the text complex. And then materials include choice implementation and learning activities to support diverse learning needs. You can see in here, the text overview includes a recommendation for the reading approach. For example, what can be read in class versus what can be read at home, which helps free teachers up to focus on text and lesson internalization. Materials also include choice, or continuing along the idea of implementation and learning activity choice to support diverse learning needs. You can see that nearly all lessons include core and optional activities. The optional activities are typically extensions or enrichment or scaffolded supports. The optional activities help teachers meet diverse learning needs and also flex the lesson content to meet the length of their teaching block, and also potentially their schedules over the course of the semester or the year. And then lastly, there's really robust remote learning guidance provided both at the program level and then also at the unit level. What you see here is an example of a program level remote learning guide. You'll see it includes supports for both synchronous and asynchronous learning. And if you take just a minute to skim over the table of contents, you can see the level of depth that this goes to in terms of the guidance that is provided for teachers. So this is the program level guide. And then on this next slide, we have an example of a unit level remote learning guide. And you can see that it provides guidance at the actual lesson level for each lesson within the unit. I'll pause here for a few seconds just so you can see an example of what this looks like. Okay, so that was a high-level overview of how the program is designed to help address our COVID-specific context. Again, before moving on to the final section of the presentation, I'll pause. Kendrick, are there any questions or is there anything popping up in the chat that we should address?
Nothing has popped up yet. Again, if y'all have questions, you definitely can put them in the chat and we'll make sure that with each section we get to those.
Great, thank you, Kendrick. Okay, so finally, in terms of licensing costs and additional considerations, the Odell Texas High School Literacy Program is an open education resource and it is available in perpetuity. So what that means is that the teacher and student facing materials are freely available to all Texans forever. There are some purchasing considerations for implementation that districts that are considering adoption need to think about. That includes trade books, unit readers, and potentially printing costs. The two items on the left are required for implementation. The first is trade books. So not all of the units, but several of the units are built around central texts. Most of these trade books are copyrighted and therefore under copyright license, which is why those are required for purchase. There are a few cases where some of these texts are now in the public domain. For example, all of the Shakespeare plays. So districts could potentially choose to leverage open online versions of those texts if you choose to. A second requirement for implementation are the unit readers. So the unit readers include all of the other texts within a unit that are under copyright. That could include things like poems, articles, essays, short stories, etc. Because they're under copyright license, they cannot be made available as an open education resource. An additional optional purchase, which is not required, but it's available should a district or a school or a teacher want it, is providing printed teacher and or student materials. All of the materials are available on the Odell digital platform, but if you wanted to have them printed out and bound, then that's something that could be made available for purchase. And then here you can get a high-level overview of how the program is structured in terms of the units over the course of 4 years. So you'll see English 1, 2, 3, and 4. As we mentioned earlier in the presentation, every year begins with a foundation unit. Every year concludes with an application unit. And then between you have development units. You'll notice that there are 5 development units here provided for each grade level. The assumption, schools will not be teaching all 5 of these units. So that's where some choice and flexibility and optionality is available for teachers and districts. And then if you would like to explore Odell, Texas HSLP materials further, you can go to the texasHomeLearning.org website. From there, you can review some highlighted examples of materials. You can watch previous webinars and trainings. You can sign up to stay in the loop about upcoming implementation supports. And you can actually sign up there directly on the Odell website in order to access all of the materials that are currently available to the public, including the materials that were screenshotted in this presentation. You can also go directly to Odell, texaselar.odelleducation.com to also set up an account and access the materials. And then if you're interested in piloting Odell, Texas high school literacy program materials or any other Texas home learning product, we're excited to announce that there's 3 new options for districts. You may have already seen this slide. The first is a spring adoption coaching opportunity that's available from April to June of this current academic year. The second is a summer 2021 pilot. And the third is the full year 2021-22 pilot. The only thing I would note is that if you're interested in either option 1 or option 2, the applications for those are due on April 9th. If you're interested in the third, the application for those are due on June 3rd or until the capacity is full. So if you think you might be interested, I would encourage you to apply sooner rather than waiting until June 3rd if that's an option for you. All of this information is available on the Texas Home Learning page and on the CRMSI banner that you can access when you go to the texasHomeLearning.org page. And then last but not least, if you have so many more questions that we're not able to get to during the remainder of our time today, you can email Texas Home Learning directly at TEA. You're also welcome to email me directly. And there's my email address right there. And we will do our best to follow up with you as soon as we possibly can. So I'm going to leave those up, and I'm actually going to open it up to questions because we have a good 20 minutes at least. You are welcome to either type them directly into the chat or you can come off mute and just start talking.
As people are thinking about their questions, Allison, one question that's come up in a couple of other ones today is about how the product supports teachers in learning about it, what professional development options are available, what can people access to learn more if they decide to adopt this, how can they get some implementation supports? Could you talk a little bit about what's available that way?
Yep, I can highlight at a high level, and I think I'm just going to preface this by saying that we're still in the process of developing that. One thing that is in the works, that is in the process of actually being filmed right now, is there's a series of videos that Odell is going to be providing that are intended to be teacher facing to introduce teachers. There's a program introduction video. There's an approach to assessment and an introduction to the approach to assessment video. And then there's introductions to each of the units videos that again will be teacher facing, that are designed to provide a high level overview for teachers into the actual content. There are also videos with guidance around how teachers can best internalize both the units and lessons in preparation for instruction. So that's one resource that's asynchronous that will be available. In terms of synchronous options, unfortunately, I don't know the answer off the top of my head right now, Kendrick, but that's something that if people are interested in, they can definitely email me directly or reach out to Texas Home Learning, and we can follow up as soon as we know more specific details. I don't want to accidentally say something that's incorrect.
Great, no, that's perfect. People have been really interested in some of our other sessions today about those asynchronous options. So that's great for people to know. What other questions? No, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Kendrick, I didn't mean to cut you off. The other thing I would suggest is if you are interested in learning more, you can go again to, here, I'll back it up. You can go either to the Texas Home Learning website directly, or you can go straight to this Odell education site. If you go to Texas Home Learning, there's a link to get you to this Texas Odell education site. Yeah, you do have to sign up for an account, but that will give you access to all of the publicly facing materials. And within there is a program guide, and it is a very robust document, 60 to 70 pages, that gives you very detailed information about the entire program. So about the approach, about all of the various components, about how vocabulary is addressed, about the suggestions for independent reading, about support, differentiated support in order to meet the needs of all learners. So I think that's also a really great document. I'm sorry, I don't have a screenshot of it available right now, but that's also a really great document to get started with if you want to go a little bit deeper asynchronously in terms of learning more just about the program as a whole.
Great. And we just had a question come in on the chat that was clarifying the issue with copyright, Allison. If you could just restate that one more time about what has to be purchased because of issues with copyright.
Yeah, let me go back to the slide. I believe is instruction. Yeah, okay. So in terms of the trade books, those are required for purchase in order to meet, because they are in fact under copyright, unless it is something that is already available openly, for example, again, like Shakespeare's plays. So, you know, how a district chooses to acquire those books is a district level decision. I believe THL does offer some guidance around that and potentially a resource. And again, I would reach out to THL to get more about purchasing. That's not my area of expertise. But the reason is because we want to make sure that we're not violating anything that's under copyright. That's the same with the unit readers. There are, as you saw in the text list sample, when we were looking at the text list for, I apologize, I don't recall the name of the unit off the top of my head. There are numerous supplemental texts that are provided for anything that's not an open resource and that is under copyright. That could be a poem, it could be a short story, it could be a play. Generally, those tend to be more contemporary texts. We do have to purchase those because we don't want to break any copyright laws. Does that answer the question?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Allison, can you speak to some of the technical side of the access, such as the various platforms Odell Education is available? What do they integrate with digitally?
Great, good question. So Odell is its own platform, meaning when you if you going back to this website, if you go and you register for an account, you can start immediately accessing their materials. In terms of learning platforms, that is also not my area of expertise. And so if that is something that you're trying to do, again, I'd recommend emailing texashomelearning.org. And I think we can get you to the right person who can answer that question more specifically. But if you go, again, if you go and you register for Odell and you go straight, it'll take you straight to the platform and it's available, like it is its own website that is available. And then I think if you need to do some sort of integration with whatever digital learning platform or online learning platform you're doing, that's a question that I would refer to Texas Home Learning. I'm not sure if that addressed the need that you were highlighting.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know more about that side.
No, you can't speak to it, and it's okay. But we would need to reach out to Texas Home Learning to get more information on that, or either contact Odell Education directly.
Yeah, I would recommend Texas Home Learning because Odell's expertise is with their own product. I think Texas Home Learning is familiar with the different learning platforms and knows more about what's actually going on with Texas districts in terms of ensuring online learning access for students. So I would start there and you know, they will make sure that you get connected to the right person to help answer your specific questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then there's a question in the chat about that week of April 5th. We advertised yesterday that there will be some additional sessions. And yes, Odell's session, I will post that in the chat as well. But they will be available on April 9th at 9 a.m. They'll be doing a session where you can talk to them and ask some questions. Like we talked about yesterday, if you were with us, this is sort of part one of learn a little bit about the products, ask some questions, and then you'll have another round where you can meet with them in about 2 weeks to give you some time, take all the information you've learned, take it back to your district, see what additional questions you come up with, and learn a little bit more that way.
I also see that someone posted that you can find a link to purchase the books through Xanadu through the Odell website. So thank you for posting that. That is true. If you go to Odell, click into a unit, click the text overview tab, there's a link to order the books through Xanadu. That is an option. It is not necessarily the only option for the trade books.
So I just added to the chat the date and time for the Odell session on the 9th, and also the link to register for that as well, if that's something you're interested in continuing this conversation and learning even more about the product.
I would also, again, if you think you might be interested, encourage you to go ahead and register with Odell, because that will give you access to all of the materials that are currently publicly available. Again, there are program level documents on the homepage. Once you are registered, there are program level documents down kind of at the bottom that give you some great information. There's the general program guide that I referenced earlier. There's the program level remote learning guide. You can learn some more information about all of the texts. And then if you click into a unit, you can see the full array of materials that are available. Not just the materials that we previewed for you on this call, but you can see like an actual full-blown lesson. You can see the student activity over on the left-hand side. You can see the narrative guidance that's provided to teachers on the right-hand side, including supports for differentiation supports for all learners, considerations for different types of learning, etc. So I really encourage you to go in and play with the product if you think you might be interested, because it's a great way to learn more.
Are there any additional questions that Allison can answer? Again, feel free to come off mute if that's easier, or place those in the chat. All right, if not, I'm going to place a link in the chat that's a quick feedback survey for this session. Again, if you've been in all of these, you're hearing the same speech from me, but it is the same link that you've been given earlier today. And we do ask that for each session in that drop-down menu, you just select the different one this time, so that we're getting feedback for each specific product, gathering any additional questions that you might have. So please let us know if there's anything else that we can support you with, or there's any other questions that you have. So the feedback survey is linked in the chat now. And again, thank y'all so much for participating today and for all of your questions.